Hello and welcome back to Meat City Gaming. JD here with another episode of Battle Bytes here in World of Tanks, and it is Road to the Motherland Volume 2. And as you can see, I have unlocked the Motherland tank. And so I decided to take it out for a spin in the 2 PVE missions to see if I could accomplish them to secure the badge that you get for doing so. So, right at the start, if you have already completed the PVE missions, or if you have no interest in doing so, this video is not for you. Thank you for tuning in, thank you for clicking, but this is all about the PvP missions. The next video will be my wrap-up, my carnage report from the Road to the Motherland PvP ops to secure the Motherland, but this one's just about the PvE. So, going forward, that's what we're going to discuss. And so I jumped into the first of the 2 PvE missions here, and right away, a problem I noticed is the ammo count is extremely low in this tank. So I was thinking to myself, there's a lot of tanks here in this mission. I ran through it once with my Cromwell just to get a feel for it. And also I missed my poor Cromwell. I have not touched that tank as I've been grinding through the Russian tanks for the ops. And I was thinking that I don't know if this tank is going to have enough ammo capacity to get through the fight. So I'm trying to be extremely cautious with my shots. I don't want to miss, I don't want to bounce. I want every shot to ring true because I think most of them are going to be needed. So we've secured the first couple of passes here, and this is at 4 times speed, the gameplay here. I really want to make this as painless as possible. So we're warping through this, and we'll get to the good points and get to the things that you need to know for these missions as quickly as possible. So we're trying to secure the 3rd capture point here, and once again, the tanks that we're facing, not a big threat. We're able to get through them pretty quickly. But again, our ammo count is dipping, and the tanks that we're facing now, they've got quite a few hit points, and especially this Panzer, yeah, it's going to take 4, 5 shots, 6 shots to take him down. We're just about out of ammo. We have 3 shots left, so I think, wow, that's really bad. I need to ram this guy to kill him if I'm going to have any shot here at the end. I'm hoping maybe, and of course my first ram wasn't enough. So we're going to go around the back and try to ram where his armor is weaker, but thankfully an ally finally helps me out. So we've got 3 shells left, and we're going to go for the end assault here. When you take this last capture point, you kind of get an all-out blitz. And it wasn't too bad in the Cromwell Knight, but as you can see, when you play, the tier of the tank that you're playing influences the tanks you face. So usually you'll see about 1 or 2 tiers below what you're facing, except for this final battle. In this final battle, you can see a tier above your tank. And the Motherland is a tier 8, so you're going to see tier 9s, and German tier 9s include things like the Jagdtiger, oh boy, and Tiger 2s at tier 8, and Borsigs. And so with 3 shots left, there is no way I could kill a single one of those tanks without massive help from my ally. So I think I need to get myself into a good position, you know, make these 3 shots count, and then really have my allies go to town, and maybe I'll be able to salvage a win here. But as you're going to see, I don't even get close. There I think, okay, the Borsig, that's a crazy dangerous gun. That's the target that I'm going to try to take out. We put 1 in. I'm completely ignoring the Tiger 2 behind me because, you know, I'm not going to be able to take him out with 7 rounds. I don't think would have enough damage. And the Borsig puts 1 in and takes me out. So, number 1 tip, if you're trying to accomplish the PvE missions, do not take the Motherland tank, especially to this one here on Caucasus, because you don't have enough damage in the tank to do it. I think it's impossible. If your AI counterparts played the game of their lives, maybe you can do it. If you've done it in the Motherland tank, if you've done that mission, send me the replay. I want to post it on my channel. I'll find some way to, you know, highlight you and compensate you for it, maybe with some gold or whatever, you know, maybe, we'll see. But I would be really impressed if anybody had completed that mission with the Motherland tank. So instead, now we're going to do the real replay. And once again, the driving sections will be at an increased speed, and then we'll slow it down to regular speed for the engagements so you can see what's going on, what kind of tanks you're facing, and where they're coming from. And then once again, when we go on the move, we'll kick the speed up. So the tank that I recommend, there are plenty of good ones out there, but if you're at the mid tiers, one that I really found I had success with was the KV-85, the tier 5 Russian heavy tank. And the reason that I like this tank so much is it's got a big punchy gun that can dish out a ton of damage. It's got high explosive rounds that will one-shot enemy tanks like those there. So I recommend going preloaded with a high explosive round at the start of the fight, because the 2 tanks that you see first are going to be lightly armored, and you'll be able to take them out in 1 single hit, which saves ammo, it saves time. Then there's one on the bridge, And it's I think it's always been a tank destroyer, but I think the spawns are random. You can probably get different tanks in different locations. They don't seem to be a set spawn. So once you take him out, then you can advance to the second capture point. And at the second capture point, you're going to have enemies come from both sides of the valley, from the left and the right. And this T-3488, yeah, he would not advance. So now, like, you need your allies, right? It's nice when they help you out and give you some damage and give the enemy something to shoot at. Not only was this guy not going to the capture point to help, he's getting the heck out of there and blocking me on the way. So he gave me a big old nope and took off. But no problem. You get in here and we have a Hetzer up on the ridge, and he'll probably take 2 shots from this this gun. You want to go for the lower plate. The angling on that tank's pretty good, but this high caliber gun, it's going to go through anything. Again, that's another reason the KV-85 is such a good choice. Its damage potential is great. Its shot penetration and damage values are great on an individual level, and the armor is fantastic. So you can take a bunch of hits. Most of these tanks that you're going to face are low tier guns, and they're just going to bounce off the armor, even if you're looking at another tank, even if you're not angled correctly. So we save a little bit of ammo there and just go for a little ram to finish off the couple of hit points left on the looks. And then we're going to loop up and around and go to the third capture point. And you can see we're doing pretty well here. I don't think we've taken a single point of damage, even though we've taken a number of hits. But this next spawn is where the enemies start to get a little tougher. Now they'll start to match your tier as opposed to being 1 or 2 lower. And if I referred to the KV-85 as a tier 5, I think I got that wrong. I think this is actually the tier 6 heavy. But regardless, so we've seen tier 4s. My allies are tier 6. And what I like to do, you get, again, enemies come from both directions. So I like to come down the little slope here, and then you can come up around, and now you only have tanks facing you from one direction. Now, in this run, my allies are actually doing some great work. These guys take out a number of tanks, which did not happen on my Motherland playthrough. That's why I think there's a 1% chance if your allies go absolutely bonkers taking out enemy tanks, maybe you could do it in the Motherland. But I don't know if you'll get that lucky. I don't think it's possible, especially in the amount of time that they give you to complete the mission. So anyway, we come back up here and we take out the 2 tanks now that are in the cap. So we had 2 come from the left. These 2 would have came from the right. We scooted down the slope to get out of the way so we didn't have a crossfire. And then we come back up the hill, take out the enemies in front, and then take out the ones in the cap circle. Be careful if you choose a really slow tank with a low rate of fire. Those 2 tanks get in the cap circle, and they can start capping it fairly quickly. So you don't want to dilly-dally too much. You need to get back and get the cap circle reset. If you do my little skadoop there down the slope, but it shouldn't be too bad. As long as you're not in an extremely slow tank, it's not going to be a big deal. And if you have really heavy armor and you play smart and you kind of angle your armor and side scrape, you could probably not have to do that little skadoop. That's probably an unnecessary tactic, especially at these lower tiers. If you're trying to do it at tier 10, yeah, maybe that makes more sense. So we're going to advance on the final capture point. And I did this in the Cromwell Knight and kind of blazed through it. It wasn't really a big deal, but I love that tank. It's kind of OP for its rank, but the armor's not great on it. I definitely took some hits. Well, let me tell you, it's been a breeze up until now. We've taken 1 damaging hit, but it gets a little intense at the end. Now, part of that is my own failings here. I'm kind of up on these boxes, and I cannot get the gun down on this tank. He should be dead 2 or 3 times by now. But these little barricades that are built are preventing me from getting the shot lined up. Now we get ourselves straightened out. We put a big shot in, and our allies take him out. And we see the Panzer III-4 advancing towards us, so we put 1... As soon as he crests the ridge here, oh, there we go, there's our first shot. The barricades, again, were blocking my hit indicator. And the problem is I've taken so long doing this now. There we go, we got rid of him. There's 1 more in front of us still. That now the guys that come around the other side have got my rear, and they're starting to do some serious damage here. So now I'm probably a 1 hit, maybe a 2 hit at this point. So I need to duck into cover, and there we take another hit, and I'm going to try and side scrape and get hull down to as much of these vehicles as possible. Thankfully, we've got the side of the VK who's looking at one of my allies, and we're able to take him out. There's 2 left. One of them is certainly a 1-shot. We're going to see if we can get him first. And for some reason, I left that other tank's gun in there. I should have taken out the tank on the right, because he's just 1 hit. Now I do it right. He had less to shoot at there, but we're close enough that shot's going to go in, and it does. And now just 1 tank left, but I need to be really cautious and wait for the shot. He's got a little autoloader, probably not going to be able to damage me in this location. And we take out the last tank for the victory there in this PVE mission. So be careful with that last setup, that last flag. I would recommend you aggressively advance towards one of the 2 flanks, either down the mountain or reverse yourself and go back the way you came, because you want to push into those enemies. There's only 2 or 3. You'll face them from the front. You can take them out, and the other enemies from the other flank will have a much farther route to have to take to get to you. But at the end of the day, this is not too difficult of a mission. I think it's definitely the harder of the two, and once you complete that, you're halfway home. So now there's just one other mission, which we have started up now, and once again, I've selected the KV-85. Of course, there's other tanks you can do this in, but just think about having enough armor to bounce shots, because there's going to be times where you're getting flanked by enemies. Have enough ammo capacity to deal with the number of tanks. I'll show you where all the tanks spawn and what kind of enemies you're dealing with, and you'll be just fine. So once again, you could probably preload a high explosive round if you have a high caliber gun. The first tank always seems to be one of these low tier lightly armored affairs. In this case, it's the PZ-38NA, which is a very small lightly armored German tank. And I would have been able to take him out in just one shot, I think, if I had hit him with the high explosive round. But regardless, my ally finishes him off, and the other tank comes back from the other side. Now, once I had them come from the other side of the railroad tracks, but in this case, I think he's actually going to come to the right. Yep, down here in the valley. And again, it's just one tank. You've already taken out the first one, so the second one won't be much of a problem. And in this case, we're facing a Hetzer, so we're just going to poke out here and eliminate him, and then we'll move on to the second capture point, which is actually very, very close to the first. You start out in the town here for this PVE mission, and the first 2 capture points are pretty much right next to each other. So our first shot goes in, we're reloading, and we'll have the side of this tank, give a little lead, shot goes in, and he's eliminated. So now we can advance to the second capture point, which is just behind me. And once you activate this point, I think all the enemies are going to come from the other side of the railroad tracks. So some come from the left as I'm looking, and some come from the right. So I'm going to pop up here and try to aggressively push into these guys, and we can see that the first tank is coming from the right. We get the gun turned around, and I'm going to put one into this Martyr 38T. Again, I'm trying to keep my armor angled here pretty well, so that if he hits me, it's going to bounce, and it does, and then he turns to look at somebody else, and we get a completely useless ammo rack on that tank that had less than 10% of his hit points. And then the Hetzer comes from the other side. I think there might be 2 that come from this side. I think there's 3 total tanks in this second wave. So we're trying to get the gun down here. We're able to do so, take the Hetzer out, and now we're looking for the third tank, which came from the right side again, but from the near side of the railroad tracks. And it's another Martyr 38T. First shot in. And again, if you're using the KV-85, high explosive for the Martyrs, it'll take that out without much of a problem. So if you're setting off that second capture point, you can have the high explosive loaded, and you'll be able to pop those guys in just one hit. So the next thing we need to do is go all the way to the north of the map. It's where the northern team spawns when this is a standard battle on the multiplayer mode of the map. And so we're going to run down here, set off this capture point, and the enemies are going to come from the right, as we're looking right now, where that little bump over the railroad tracks is. And I think also a couple will come down the long road that runs down the 2 line. So yeah, there's lots of houses here. You can kind of get yourself into cover. The first tank always seems to come from the railroad tracks. He gets tracked and set on fire by an ally. Again, I went out in the Cromwell Night, and I don't think my allies did more than 100 points of damage each. And every time I come out in the KV-85, these guys turn into rock stars and start helping me out. Maybe it's the tank that they're put in, the T-34-88, I think is what they're equipped with. Maybe the AI is really good in those tanks, because they seem to do much better when they're in these than when they're in some of the other counterparts that I've seen. So 2 quick shots, and we take out those advancing enemies down the road, once again with a completely unnecessary ammo rack. But hey, it looked pretty. And now there's just 1 point left. So at this point, it's the final victory lap. This final push is nothing compared to the one in the previous map. Everybody comes from ahead of you. As we're looking, they're going to come from the far south. There's 4 or 5 of them. You have more allies. Your allies are kind of more competent here because there's no mountains or ridges or other roads that are kind of diverting your allies. So this is pretty brutal for the advancing enemies, especially in this KV-85 tank. So we're going to poke up here, and again, all the tanks are going to come from down the side. I'm trying to use the rock on my left to give me a little bit of cover from the side, but, probably overthinking it, not really necessary. We see our first enemy. Again, he gets set on fire. And before we can get our next shot off, he's taken out. And then we see the T-25 advancing towards us. We give a little lead, put a shot in. And before we get our next shot off, does he get taken out? Actually, he's below our gun depression. So we're going to switch up to the VK 3001H and also a 3001P. It looks like they're coming towards us. These are Meteor German tanks. Again, this is when you face your stiffest resistance, but not quite as bad as in the previous battle. And again, I've got my frontal armor towards these guys, so much harder for them to get through, whereas in the last one, I allowed the pincer maneuver to have a couple of the tanks at my rear, and they were able to do some damage. And look at this, my allies are just cleaning up. There's just one tank left. We're going to come in for the ram. We hit the ram. It's a successful kill. And there you go. Those two missions, you finish them up, and you will have secured the PVE op for the Road to the Motherland, which results in a nice little medal here. And just one other note, when I ran through these in my Cromwell Knight, I made about 20,000 silver in credits, and the XP wasn't bad either. So usually these missions were kind of a credit drain, a credit sink. It wasn't bad. I mean, you'll make more than that in a PvP match, but these are quick, they're easy. So don't be afraid to explore these with your tanks, but you have to do them in Soviet tanks in order to complete them one time each in a Soviet vehicle, and you will be awarded with the medal. I think it's Call of the Motherland, but you'll be able to find it on the website. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Hopefully you found it useful. If you haven't already completed these PvE missions, go out there, bang them out real quick. They're easy. You get some silver. You get a nice little medal to add to your war chest there. So thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed that, please give a thumbs up. I do appreciate it. And feel free to subscribe for future content. See you next time.